Hello folks, and welcome back to the Bootcast Series 4. I'm your host Eugene of Irish Bootstrapper. Delighted to have the show back on the road now. It's been a challenging time, as everybody knows, over the past year, since February or March or whatever last year, since the whole COVID thing started. So delighted to have loads of new guests on this series of the Bootcast, imparting great knowledge and wisdom and tips and skills from their own lives or professions that can help you to overcome challenges in your own life. So without further ado, folks, please welcome our first guest of Series 4 to the Bootcast, Mr. Bernard Geraghty. Thanks a million, Bernard, for coming on the Bootcast. This is we're into Series 4 now, and looking to chat with loads of great people around Ireland and around the world in the fields of adventure, travel, and particularly people that are overcoming challenges and how they went about it. So just kicking off then, so where are you from yourself?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all, but from Kildare, living in Dublin. So I wasn't in lockdown, thank God.
You must have been on the border.
Literally, you know, I'm actually on the Meath-Dublin border now.
Oh, lovely. Around,
so big. I'm with the rivals now, I suppose.
Yeah, geez, the whole lockdown situation is mental. Like, it's just bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, telling you, it's mad. Like, especially, you know, you're talking about overcoming challenges and, you know, different things. Like, this in itself is probably the biggest challenge that we faced, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely is, and hopefully we'll all come out of it the far side fairly soon. What's your profession, and have you been affected by the lockdown or?
Yeah, so I'm a professional landscape photographer, landscape and astrophotographer, and I have been severely affected by this because my profession, I suppose, you know, although it's professional landscape photographer and astrophotographer, it's my main job is running photo tours and photo workshops in Ireland and Iceland, Faroe Islands, Norway, Italy. Like, literally, I'm supposed to have just literally come back from doing a 2-week Africa tour. So it is like, yeah, it's been severely affected. You know, just yesterday I had to postpone a Faroe Islands trip I'm supposed to have next month, you know, and I think more will probably have to follow, you know. Yeah. So yeah, it's affected, like, both financially and, you know, at the start it was great. It gave me time. I've been on the road for 3 years solid, literally, to the point where I would be coming back from Scotland after doing a 4 or 5 day Scotland photo tour. Yeah. I'd be coming back on a Sunday night at like 11 p.m. midnight, and then 4 a.m. Monday morning I'd be flying out to Italy to do a week-long tour.
Jesus, yeah. Wow.
You know, so like at the start I thought it was a nice break, and it was an amazing break. And what I did was I put time and effort into a new podcast. I put time and effort into a new office, building a new studio, a brand new website, which took up like probably 10 or 12 weeks. And, you know, the positivity was still there. And then, you know, you see, you know, things happening and getting worse. And, you know, you think every month is going to get better, and it was actually getting worse, and it starts to eat away at you, you know?
Yeah. And were you able to kind of make up the balance with Irish and local work, or?
Not really. Like, you never will, like, because, you know, like, I was supposed to go to Iceland in June, Norway in July, you know, Africa in August, Italy in August, September. I was supposed to have groups over then as well from Switzerland and France and Germany, which obviously they had to cancel. So, and then there's going to be a lot more for the rest of the year. So you'll never have the demand for Irish trips with Irish people.
Yeah.
You know, in the long term. Like, in the short term, yes, but realistically, no, you could never balance it out, you know. You could never balance it out.
And so you mentioned astrophotography. So
yeah,
that's literally looking at the stars and trying to capture the Milky Ways, and
literally, like, that is literally what it is. You know, stargazing, astronomy, whatever way you want to put it. And, you know, we go to the darkest locations we can find. And, like, you know, you think of astro and astronomy, you don't necessarily, like, some people necessarily wouldn't think of Ireland. You know, if you live in Dublin or Kildare or Meath or anywhere where you have, you know, plenty of light pollution, you wouldn't really think of Ireland as a destination. But actually, like, you know, you go up to Wicklow is quite good. Still a lot of light pollution from Dublin. But actually, if you go down the south coast, so a lot of people don't know that down around Ballinskelligs and Cahersiveen and Kerry is actually an international dark sky reserve. And not only that, it's a gold medal dark sky reserve. And I believe it's the only one or one of two in the whole Northern Hemisphere.
Really, yeah?
So, like, that'll tell you how dark the skies actually are in parts of Ireland.
Jesus. And with your gear then, like, do you need a super kind of special zoom lens or something to...
Not like, yeah, like, listen, for landscape photography, you get away with some pretty basic kit if you know how to use it properly. In terms of astrophotography, you know, given that you have to push the boundaries a little bit more with camera settings and stuff, you do need to you do need to have that, you know, little bit extra gear. You know, you're not talking 10 grand's worth of gear. You know, you can go and buy yourself a camera for 700 or 800 euros and a lens for 700 or 800 euros, and you know, once you know what you're doing, get absolutely stunning shots. You know, but no, you don't need anything specialist. Just depending, you know, you can spend as much or as little as you like, and you know, the results to a certain extent will, you know, you'll notice the results in it. You know.
Yeah. And just on that, like, is it all about getting that perfect shot?
Well, like it is. It depends on, you know, what you have in your head. Like, for 3 years, I had in my head this shot I wanted to get with Carron Tool. You know, obviously Ireland's highest mountain. Get a shot of Carron Tool with, you know, the Milky Way over it and the tent in the shot lit up. You know, camp up there. And literally a couple of weeks ago, you know, after 3 years of trying, I managed to get those conditions. So like, it is, you know, like I climbed up, you know, up a gully called Brother O'Shea's Gully, up there to the right, then over the knife. It's knife edge, I suppose, in parts, the Bean Carra Ridge. And, you know, so I was moving away from Carron Tool, halfway between maybe the Bean Carra Ridge and Bean Carra Mountain, on a bit of flat ground, set up the tent. And the view I was looking at then, I was going to shoot a panorama, and it was going to get like the Hags Glen, Carron Tool, the Bean Carra Ridge, Carra Mountain, and literally the Milky Way right over it. And it takes a lot, you know, of effort, because, you know, in Ireland we need to get the weather. First of all, you know, we're not blessed with clear skies every night. We need to get, you know, the conditions right in terms of on the mountain. Like, you don't want to go up there, you know, when it's absolutely like brutal winds. So the wind that night was pretty much zero. You know, so it also means if you're up there with a good spell of weather, you don't need to bring, like, literally, like, I know people say conditions on mountain can change and stuff like that at any time, and that is so true. But when you have a spell of high pressure over Ireland, that or anywhere, you know, that has been there for, you know, days or weeks or whatever, and it's not going anywhere, you're pretty much guaranteed, yes, I'm going to be okay. So I don't need to bring my waterproof jacket. You know, my whole business, I've spent 5 years now studying the weather, you know, meteorology, all this kind of stuff. Now, in a very amateur way, and I have some good friends to help me out. But, you know, it's very rare. I think I get it wrong with the weather. So especially when hiking with camera gear, camping gear, food, drink, you know, you don't want to be bringing stuff that you won't need, you know. So yeah, like that was about getting the perfect shot. You know, sometimes it's nice to shoot the Milky Way straight on, but sometimes it's nice to have this big subject as well.
So Bernard, what would be your favorite story to tell?
I suppose, like, there's so many good stories. Like, you know, that Carron Tool story was a good story. Like, it was brilliant, because we you know, we hiked up in the, you know, a lovely weather, and then once we got to the top, it was like pure cloud, you know, and we could barely see in front of us. But again, it was that channel of weather I knew we were going to get. Well, I was fairly positive we were going to get, because I drove down from Dublin, you know, all that long drive, then to start hiking for 3 hours as well, just to get up to the top. So like, you know, I knew there was a chance that, you know, this might not happen, but I knew there was a fair chance that it would. And I also knew that the weather, you know, either side of that window wasn't great. So I knew this was my opportunity. So I suppose that was definitely, you know, a good story in itself, because literally before it got full darkness around 11 p.m., any bit of cloud that was around us just literally dropped down into the valleys, you know, and we were left above the cloud and just the mountains and the stars. And then literally as the Milky Way actually set, you know, below the horizon, the cloud came back in again. So we had like literally a 2-hour window to shoot. And for that 2 hours, it remained completely clear. The cloud left and then the cloud came back. It was as if, you know, the cloud is saying, listen, here's your chance. Take it while you can. And then a couple of hours later, it's like, right, I'm coming back now, you know. Like you get all sorts of stories, you know, from the trips. And another one that sticks out is, you know, flying in last year to the Faroe Islands with a group. And, you know, you could see as we were flying in, you know, the Faroe Islands is full of mountains and fjords. And all you can see above the airplane is blue sky. But all you can see down on the Faroe Islands is the tops of all the mountains and then all the cloud completely below it. So it was just like we're flying into a full-on cloud inversion. And the thing that automatically comes into your head is that, well, you know, that looks nice. You know, it's going to be amazing. But as soon as we land, you know, it's always in your head that you're at these amazing conditions. As soon as you get to these amazing conditions, they're going to go. They're going to leave.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the automatic thing. You know, you wake up for a sunrise in the morning and you see the potential in the sky and you think, wow, it's definitely going to happen. But you think, no, in my luck, it actually won't happen. So you always have this little nagging thought in your head and it's like, wow, it looks amazing. But by the time I get off the airplane, get my bags, get the car, drive to a location that I want to go and shoot while we have this cloud inversion, it's going to be gone. And we landed, we all got our bags, we got our car, we dropped the stuff off at the hotel, which was right beside the airport. We got our gear and we headed straight out. We drove 10 minutes to our parking spot and then we had an hour's hike to this location. And it was all in complete fog. So my thought was, I'll get here, we'll be in the complete fog. The viewpoint that I want to get, we won't be able to see a thing. But given my, I think, knowledge of the, you know, wondering or like learning how things work in terms of weather, I thought, right, once it comes close to sunset, the cloud will start to drop down towards the ocean. And that was pretty much the case. We got to our location completely fogged over, like couldn't see a thing. And next thing, I knew what was there, but my clients didn't. And the fog started to drop down, and this like Mordor shape started to appear. And it's a massive 300-meter high sea stack in the sea. Yeah. And as the fog pushed down, the stack rose above the fog. You know, and like those are just memories, because like you have like literally grown men in their 50s like looking at this scene unfolding before them, screaming and shouting like it's Christmas Day.
Yeah.
So like there's so many of that, like, you know, and you know, if you want a kind of a funny story, in Scotland, you know, last year as well, I think it was, I remember like being in the local shop on the Isle of Skye, and we'd had a long day driving from the airport and shooting and stuff. So I was like, do you know what? I'm not a big drinker, but I was like, I'd love an IPA. I was like, I love an IPA. So I was like, right, I'll go into the shop, grab a few bits, you know, shopping, but I'll grab 2 bottles of IPA. And like, you know, it was dark or whatever. And I stood in the queue. I swear to God, right? There was this guy in front of me and he was being served. And I was the next one. And there was 4 or 5 people behind. And like literally stood there for 10, 12 minutes, right? Literally, this guy really slow with the checkout, moving his stuff while talking to the guy behind the counter. Now, the guy behind the counter wasn't saying, listen, you're going to need to hurry up. You've got a queue. So like people, locals obviously behind me are like, come on, you know. So I was like, right, I'm not getting involved, but it hurries things up. Fair enough. So I got there eventually after 10 or 12 minutes and I put down my stuff and he's scanning. Comes to the beers and he's like, sorry, pal, can't serve you. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, it's past 10. And I took out the phone. I was like, it's exactly 1 minute past 10. I know, I can't serve you. It's past 10. I stood here for 10 or 12 minutes. Like, I would have been able to buy my beer. Like, if you had hurried up, I would have got my beer. Oh, can't help you, pal. So I was like, oh, here. So I left the whole shop in there. I was brutally disappointed, you know, because I was like really looking. So that was like, you know, although I was like so like weed off at the time, like it is a funny story, like, you know. So they are the kind of things, like, you know, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, you know.
And what kind of traits, like, do you have or do you need to work in your profession? Because obviously you're relying a lot on maybe luck or the stars to align, literally.
That is probably the best question I've ever been asked. Like, literally, that is probably the best question I've ever been asked. And I have done hundreds of like presentations where we have Q&As and stuff, and no one has ever asked me a question like that. And what I say to that is like everyone messages you on Instagram and Facebook being like, you're living the dream, you know, you're living the dream. And to an extent you are, but that question sums it up. And yeah, like you have someone who might have paid 2,000 euros to come on a trip to Norway or you know, Italy or whatever, and they've come to shoot the Northern Lights or the stars. There's nerves straight away, like, because they've put their money and their faith in you, you know. So like, you know, just because you go to Norway, it doesn't mean you're going to see the Northern Lights, or Iceland, you know, because the weather is everything. You have to have clear skies. There has to be like solar activity for the Northern Lights to kick off. So I've been lucky that on pretty much every trip I've got to see the Northern Lights. So it's not too bad. But there is that added pressure all the time because people have put their faith in you. Like, you also have to be a people person. You know, you have to be on 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, you literally, because when you're not teaching, you're probably sitting having meals with people, and, you know, depending on the accommodation, like Norway, there's gorgeous cabins, and, you know, like there's probably 2 or 3 bedrooms in each cabin. And, you know, if there's generally, I get a one 2-bed and 1 3-bed cabin. You know, everyone has their own room, and then we bail into one of the kitchens of the cabins and we make our dinner and we have the crack and a beer or whatever. So like you're around these people like 24/7. So you have to be on, you know, you can't wake up like you do at home. You know,
you're switched
like,
on.
For instance, like actually, literally, I went to bed last night about 1 o'clock. I was up like editing photos all day and night yesterday, and I was like, right, you know, I come doing the podcast in the morning, so I'll go get, you know, 6 or 7 hours good kip, and woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning to my fire alarm going off. You know, so like straight away you're like, you know, that obviously going to put you in bad form. It's disrupting your sleep. And you wake up at, you know, 7:30 and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to get up. Like, and, you know, you like, I can go and talk to my partner, or, you know, you can go and talk to your parents or anybody, and you can be as miserable as you like and they'll just take it on the chin. You can't do that with clients. So you have to say, right, you know, I'm not happy this morning, because sometimes you just wake up in bad form. I'm not happy, but I have to at least show that I'm happy. You know, that kind of way.
Yeah.
So, no, like you have to be a people person, first of all, for anyone that's like thinking of getting into this kind of industry, not just with photography, but with any type of adventure, or, you know, it could be kayaking tours, could be hiking tours, could be anything. Number one, you have to be comfortable around people and not happy all the time, but like just be switched on at all times.
Good stuff. What's been your biggest physical challenge that you've ever done?
I suppose if you're talking, like, I remember, I think it was 3 years ago, I done like the solo 4 peaks. So it was, I think that was kind of, you know, really cool. I like, one of the reasons I got into photography in the first place was like 5 years ago, you know, went through like a couple of years of hard times, not realizing at the time it was that kind of hard, but only when I start really coming out the other side, looking back, being like, wow, that was a tough time. You know, you know, like, and that was tough. You know, like I used to literally, this is no joke, like back in like 2000, maybe 12, 13, 14, you know, when I was going through that tough time. At the time, as I said, at the time I didn't realize it, but like I was eating like 4 or 5 Chinese takeaways a night. Or not a night, a week, sorry. But like still, you know, I was doing nothing. Like, you know, now I cycle like, you know, every second day. I'm hiking all the time. I'm out and about. I'm, you know, the first sight of a river or waterfall, I'm straight in there for a swim. And that doesn't matter if it's in my boxers or completely stark naked. It's just straight in. Do you know, so that's a challenge. I suppose it is a physical challenge in a way, but in terms of real physicality was, you know, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago doing the 4 peaks, the solo 4 peak challenge, which is the highest mountain in each province in 4 days. And then I done it the year after and I done 4 in 3 days. So I'm kind of wondering, is there a thing there to get 4 in 2 days done?
You could be the first. Who knows?
Well, maybe there is. Listen, I'm sure there's lads that have done it, but like it is all about personal challenges. Like, you know, the first time I did I did Carrontool, Muilray, Donard, and Lugnaquilla, and then the second time I did Lugnaquilla and Carrontool in the same day. And it's funny because, you know, driving from Kildare to Wicklow, you know, which is the hour drive or just over an hour, and then, you know, hiking up Lugnaquilla and back. And then driving down to Kerry, you know, 4-hour drive down to Kerry, and then, you know, getting down in time enough to be able to do Carrontool the very same day and getting down just as it was getting dark. And I thought I'd give myself a start then for getting to Mayo the next day. So after that, I drove from Kerry back to Limerick, stayed in a hotel that night, and then on to Mayo. So, like, that was tough. Like, you know, that was very tough.
And what made you do that? Why did you want to do that?
I don't know. I just get these notions in my head, really. So like the very first one I did for, I just like, was like, oh, I'll just do it for charity. I was like, one day I literally was just like, oh, I'll do something for charity. And I did it for Focus Ireland. I think I raised 2,500, which like, it wasn't part of any event. It was just me. So it was quite good to do that.
Good stuff.
The second time like was actually, a friend was doing it for like suicide. I think it was Pieta House or something like that. I can't remember fully, but I was guiding him, like, so I was like, how hard do you want to push yourself? And, you know, that was it. We did that, and I think he raised in around kind of 2 or 3 grand, and even actually another kind of challenge, more of a mental challenge, but through lockdown, you know, given that you're losing your income, you know, by the day and week and stuff like that, I was investing more in my company with a new website, new office, new studio, new podcast. So, you know yourself with podcast gear, what you have to get.
Yeah.
I actually said, you know what, all these camera clubs, you know, I've done so many, you know, face-to-face camera club presentations with, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 people. So I said, I put a thing out there actually. Someone, I never thought of it at the time, but someone messaged me from a camera club and they're like, oh, how much would you charge to do a Zoom presentation in the middle of the lockdown of your images? And I was like, never really thought about that, but here's an idea. How about you just donate €50 to a local charity of your choice in my name? And they're like, wow, geez, that's very generous. So I came up with an idea then. I was like, oh, I'll actually put it out there. And I put it out there that if any camera clubs want a Zoom presentation or some Photoshop or like, you know, editing done for their club or whatever over Zoom, I was going to waive my fee in return for €50, €50 donation to a local charity of their choice in my name. So actually that ended up, like, what happened was some clubs were like, yeah, you know, they'll get me, and they'll say, listen, you know, we donated your 50, but, you know, as a club we put together another 100.
Yeah.
So it actually turned out that raised over 2 grand over lockdown, you know. And the mental part of that was, it was getting hard because I did like over 20 presentations, and it was getting hard because you're looking at your own images all the time, trying to stay upbeat, trying to stay enthusiastic about talking about them and the stories behind them.
Yeah.
But it doesn't help. You think, because I live on the, you know, I live like 25 minutes from Dublin City, here on the Meath Dublin border, and it's funny because like literally my Wi-Fi is like 2 megabytes. Like, so one side of, like, we live out the country, and one side of my house the last point of fiber broadband is 400 meters away, and the other side of our house is 1 kilometer away. So they literally skipped this like 1.4 kilometers. So we don't have fiber, and so it got so bad during lockdown that I actually had to postpone some talks because the Wi-Fi just wasn't good enough to support it. Well, that was tough because it is hard to keep talking about your own images, especially if you're your own worst critic,
Yeah. And just going back to that time when, you went through a rough patch kind of in 2012, 2013, how did you come out of that? Or was it just kind of, did you have a moment, or was there a kind of a gradual?
It was probably gradual. Like I always liked hiking. I'd never had like an interest in photography as such, and I always liked hiking, and I tried to start getting back into it. And like, I see myself now with all the camping gear, and I have everything I need, and I know everything proper that I need, and I'm sponsored by a company 53 Degrees North, and you can get all the best gear and stuff like that. But back then I was like hiking and trying to camp with the worst of gear, no knowledge of the weather, and you go out and the day be grand, and you'd hike and you camp, and then wake up at like 12 o'clock at night in your tent, and it hammering down, and there are drops of water coming into your tent. So although they're not great experiences, they're ones you definitely learn from, and at the time you don't realize it, but they're real positive on your mental health. But I definitely think it was gradual. And then literally I just spoke to my doctor. I was like, listen, I just don't feel myself. I was always kind of one of these ignoramuses being like, sure, mental health will never affect me. Sure, I'm always happy. And I think they're actually the people it affects most. So I was always positive. I always played sport. I always played football, soccer, the whole lot. I just spoke to my doctor, and I was like, listen, I just don't feel myself. I'm not going to go and, try to do any harm. Like, I'm definitely not at that. And I don't think I could ever even dream of that. But he was like, what do you like doing? I like doing this and this. Oh, and then I said, I like hiking. I was like, you like hiking? He said, do you document it? And I was like, no. And he goes, sure, why don't you get a camera and document your hikes? And at the time I was like, great idea. So pretty much that was my spur to go into Harvey Norman and Nace and buy a camera.
Yeah.
And it's led to me traveling the world, taking people on an adventure around the world. And, I believe that bringing people on these trips, if they're looking for something specific, be it standing under the night sky, with the Milky Way above them and all the constellations and galaxies and stuff, or shooting the northern lights, looking at the northern lights, with your eyes is the most magical thing you'll ever see. I've had people cry on trips, because they're just so humbled of what's in front of them, and taken aback, so that's amazing. That's going to be something that they're going to remember forever. And I love that feeling. I love that feeling of you definitely get a sense of achievement when you can get someone who's put their hard-earned money into your hands and you can deliver the goods, So again, that's another positive thing, and that drives you on that little bit more in terms of mentally as well,
Brilliant. What would be your top tip for somebody on the fence about maybe starting a business or doing something new or climbing a mountain, doing something kind of out of their comfort zone for the first time?
Well, at the start for me, when I start taking photos and stuff, it wasn't meant to be a business. And, you have every Tom, Dick and Harry, you're taking a photo, which, now I look back, it's literally you curl up into a ball and cringe, but that's part of the learning process. You know what I mean? But you have every kind of Tom, Dick and Harry saying, wow, you're amazing. You should sell these. You should do this. You should do that. You are the best I've ever seen, right? You get your general people telling you that, but it's actually the people who play devil's advocate. They're the ones you want to listen to. My dad would tell me, I remember my very first tour, right, was 2 Italian girls. They were in Galway. I was driving from Kildare to Galway to collect them in Galway City, drive them around Connemara for the day, drive them around Mayo for the day, out to Achill, right, around all down Benwee, down Patrick, and dropped them off at Manor Hamilton and Leitrim and drove home back to Kildare, right, all for 100 quid each.
Yeah.
Do by the time I had breakfast, lunch, and dinner, fuel, drinks, like bottles of water and stuff, I'd say I had like 60, 70 quid left. And I thought that was great. And he was like, Bernard, you're seeing what you're earning there on that day. You're not seeing what you just literally took out of it. Like, how much did you come home with in your pocket? Like, and it was like 60, 70 quid, like literally is all I had left. Yeah. And he was like, if you go to a stage, you're going to have to pay tax and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't see it at the time, but he was always there because he's a businessman as well. He was always like, listen, you're going to have to do this and this. And, like that should have been 200 or 300 euros each.
Yeah.
And it obviously should have been. But, listen to the people who are going to, at the time it will seem like criticism, but it's not. They are just playing devil's advocate, worst case scenario stuff. And that's there. Like, obviously, listen, if people are saying you're great and want to buy a print or whatever, that's fine. But definitely it's the people closest to you who will say, listen, that's cool, but what I would do this instead, take their advice on board. Like, at the time it's constructive criticism. At the time you just think it's criticism, but definitely you have to listen to those closest to you.
Brilliant.
And just go for it as well, by the way. Sorry, just believe in yourself. Just go for it. Like, I still have so much self-doubt. Like, every trip, I doubt, like, everything. Like, I doubt absolutely everything. In terms of, like, will we get the weather? Will I get them in the right position? I hope they have a good day. Like, they could be laughing, joking, having the crack, woohooing, yowing, all this kind of stuff during the day. And I'd still be standing there wondering, I wonder if they're having a good time, literally. So just believe in yourself. And, it's nice to have the little angel on one side and the devil on the other side, one saying you're great, one saying you're crap. It is nice to have them because it probably keeps you a bit more humble. So just plow on and believe in yourself, and like, you won't know unless you try. Yeah.
Good stuff. Solid advice. On that, do you have any good book recommendations, or would you be a bookman or audiobooks or anything?
I'm not a book person. Like, I think the last book I might have read was a signed Pep Guardiola book, actually. So I got his books. I got a book signed by Pep as a gift, and I read that. That was literally the only book I've ever read. I'm not one for sitting in doing nothing. I always like to be kind of active in some sort of way. Like yesterday was kind of an off day where I sat in front of the computer all day, organizing trips, editing photos, emailing people, and that's even an unusual day for me. I think, like, I do know it's good for your mental health getting books done, but I'm not a bookworm. Like, I suppose I love stories, and I think when I'm doing like my presentations, I have, I could show 50 images. I have a story. I have a story and can remember every single detail of the lead up, in the middle of it, and the aftermath of each picture. So I kind of have these mental books in my head, with that are full of stories and stuff like that. And it's funny, I'm not a book person, but someday I actually think, because I know I can look at any particular image and that memory of that day comes back straight away. So something that I might look at in the future is actually releasing a book with my images and stories. But at the moment, it's more a kind of a mental story, and everything is just trapped in my head,
Two people that inspire you.
My dad. I've just been a big supporter all my life through football. And my mom as well. Like, but my dad, like, as I say, he's a businessman. He works very hard. He does his like 16, 17 hour days and has done for the last 30 years. So he's been a good role model to look up to. And a very good friend of mine, Ruben Fields, like, Ruben, very lucky to be friends with this guy. He's just, like, in my opinion, and in the opinion of so many others, he's Ireland's best landscape photographer. Like, just absolutely so amazing. Just when you're with him, there's always such a good vibe. He's the most humble person. We slag him so much because he's so humble. Like, he's showing us some of the shots he's taken recently. And we're all just like, yeah, we're starting to resent you now, Ruben. You need to stop this. Like, you need to stop. You're starting to really want us to make us give up. Like, so, and he's just like, But like, I feel like that when I see your images, like, and you're like, nah, Ruben, stop. Like, you know, you're just like, you need to become arrogant. You obviously, you know, he doesn't, but we just to be messing with him. But nah, Ruben is a good person to be around. He does some of my workshops with me and stuff like that. And he's just a great person to be around. And, you know, everybody, you know, feeds off him. He's a different kind of person to me. Like, I'm real, like, active and like really enthusiastic, get really excited, but he's kind of like, you know, goes under the radar a little bit, you know. And yeah, he's an amazing person, amazing photographer, and, you know, very, very, very good friend.
Brilliant. Just before we wrap it up, Bernard, how can people reach out to you, get in touch, or maybe book a tour or learn about some of your...
So my website, which is BGLandscapetours.ie, on Instagram, it's just BG Landscape Tours, and Facebook, Bernard Geraghty Landscape Tours. So yeah, pretty much just type any of those into Google or Facebook or anything like that, Instagram, and you'll catch me, you know.
Lovely stuff. Bernard, thanks a million for coming on the Bootcast. Best of luck with everything, and hopefully
Eugene,
we'll see you someday.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
No problem. You're welcome. See you. And that's the end of Series 4, Episode 1, folks. Hope you enjoyed that there with Bernard Geraghty. Make sure to check out his website, BGLandscapetours.ie. It's also on Instagram as well. Please leave a review or rating wherever you do listen to your podcast, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, or any of the other podcast providers. Once again, thanks a million for following and listening to the Bootcast. And remember, become the journey.